What's going on, guys? If you're here waiting for a Skill Gap podcast, I've got good and maybe bad news for you. Now, the Skill Gap podcast is not over. Don't you worry. Persian and I are not going anywhere. That being said, today I'm not really uploading this. Now, whether you're on YouTube or you're listening via Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff, this is not an episode from the Skill Gap podcast. Now, as some of you may know, I signed with an esports initiative that was founded by Christian Vieri and Bernardo Corradi, both of which are ex-football players from the Serie A, one of which has his own icon card. You might have seen him. Obviously not an icon card that any of us would want to pack, unfortunately, even though he was amazing in real life. And one of my responsibilities in this thing is to do a weekly live stream on their Twitch channel. And one of the formats, one of the segments that I do is I sometimes have a pro player come on and we have a podcast style conversation. I pick his brain on FIFA stuff. But before we get into that, I get to know more about the person, the player, his origins, his story behind how he got into video games, into FIFA, his interests, all that good stuff. And so I'm bringing you guys the full episodes here on my channel. There's also going to be specific clips, Joe Rogan style. Maybe if there's like a clip where, you know, he talks about his experience when he beat Tex in the E-Champions League, that will be its own 20-minute, 10-minute clip that'll go on their channel. But on my channel, you can find or on my podcast channel, you will be able to find the full podcasts. These are, again, not the Skill Guy podcast, but I didn't want to put them on my main channel as the podcast format doesn't really work there. And I didn't want to start a new channel, so I figured, whatever, we'll just put it all here on the Skill Gap podcast channel. So hope you guys enjoy. Again, this is a podcast between me and a pro player, in this case Dr. Nightwatch, aka Nightwatch, aka Footwiz. Dr. Nightwatch, pro player for Footwiz, finalist and second place at the first ever E-Champions League. Ton of amazing accolades in the FIFA scene. So hope you guys enjoy. Let me know your thoughts, and yeah, enjoy the show. Dude, I'm great as well. You know, FIFA, I played the last qualifier as well. It was an interesting experience, but we do it for the content, the educational purposes. We had some interesting clips to study and analyze. But would you? I see you as, you know, I know you as Ivan. Is that how you say it, right, Ivan?
I mean,
Or
my
do you
parents
prefer
will
Ivan?
eventually, my parents will eventually listen to this. I personally prefer Ivan in English. They prefer me to be called my name Ivan, but considering Boras is Ivan, I'd like to also stand out as Ivan. Like
All
this,
right.
there's no confusion in the FIFA scene. So
Yeah.
in
All
English,
right.
be it Ivan.
Okay, good. Because I knew it was Ivan, but like I remember thinking, vaguely remembering that you might prefer Ivan. So I know you as a pro FIFA player, but you've also done casting. You stream. Would you describe yourself as mainly a professional FIFA player in the scene?
The thing is, I don't even like the term professional FIFA player. I pretty much do that as a hobby and get paid for it, in a way. Because like for a few years since I've been competing, I've been in a way avoiding being signed or like doing it professionally,
Right.
because it just adds another, I don't know, I wouldn't say vibe to it, but like feeling or like responsibility or pressure or whatever you want to call it. But I technically, for people from the outside, I am a pro FIFA player. Definitely not a streamer, consistent or part time or whatever. I occasionally stream. But yeah, I guess professional FIFA player is the way to describe me.
That's one thing I remember when we first met, which I don't know, was that in, I think we first met via Twitter around FIFA 17 times, I think, maybe
Yeah,
18
very
times.
possible.
Um,
17, 18.
yeah, and I remember you had basically this passion for the game, but more so just competing. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, 100%. I have, for some reason, a passion for FIFA, which I don't know where it really comes from. I have a passion for football, obviously, like most of us do. But for some reason, that transitions into FIFA, and like most of the things that relate to the game. And I'm a very, very competitive person. So obviously competing on FIFA is the logical step and the logical thing to do.
True. So your name is Dr. Nightwatch. It used to be just Nightwatch. For the people at home, what's the story behind the Nightwatch, and when did the doctor
Yeah,
come into play?
it's definitely not from Game of Thrones. That I can say, because one, I have not watched Game of Thrones. Don't hate me. And two, I actually don't remember. I know I've had it for ages. It's one of those that you have, I don't know, you came up with it when you were, I don't know, 10, 11 or whatever.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be surprised if I've copied it from somewhere or I've seen it from somewhere, but it just stayed. I've never really used it. I used to copy. I used to be Navi 6991, which was my birth year and my name backwards.
Yeah.
And that I stole from my mom because she had invented it. But it was
Yeah.
technically my name and my birth date, so I feel I had some right to steal it. But yeah, I didn't think that had a good ring to it, so I changed. I actually qualified for my first tournament as Navi, but yeah, I eventually changed to Nightwatch. And the doctor came into play through Dr. Hano. He might say it's kind of a steal or something along those lines, but we had something like a bet going for each Champions League, or like for me qualifying for each Champions League, which I did, and then I played with it with that nickname, with the doctor nickname at the event, and it was my breakthrough event. So
Yeah.
you don't really go back to your old one, when people know you as something. So that's the main reason it kind of stayed. If I had performed badly, I would have probably switched back, and like the joke would have been done and dusted. But it kind of stayed, and here we are.
Yeah. Would have been kind of like, I don't know if you saw the Jordan documentary, but he was 45 for a game. Then he went back to
Yeah.
23. But for you, it worked out. If, so obviously off stream, we are just talking there a bit. You told me about FIFA 15 was your first FIFA, but we'll get into that later. You said you're a competitive person and you may have stolen the PSN / gamer tag from somewhere else. What was your first video game memory then at that point?
I mean, the stolen, I don't mean even specifically from a video game. I'd probably seen it somewhere. I don't remember where, but my first video game memories were like on the Nintendo with my brother playing like Mortal Kombat and Super Mario.
Yeah.
And he's the one who kind of got me into gaming. I remember he gave me his old PC back in, I would assume it's 2001, 2002, because he gave me FIFA 2002 to play on his old PC, which was my first FIFA in terms of like just touching a FIFA.
Right.
And since then I've had a PS2, played games on it. And again, pretty casually. So my first memories are really his old PC playing Heroes of Might and Magic. For those who know, they know. And FIFA. But after that, after I had my PlayStation 2, I don't remember really spending much time on it. It was more of a, you have to be educated, you have to learn, you have to study, and video games was not really a priority in my life for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. But you did say your passion was also football. Because I've never asked you this. Do you have a favorite team at all?
I talk about this on stream occasionally, and I wouldn't say it's a controversial topic, but it's a different opinion.
Okay.
I think with time, because I had a favorite team in Bulgaria, but like Bulgarian football isn't the best thing to watch. And internationally, I haven't. As a kid, I again, like video games and stuff, I didn't watch that much football, like supporting teams like a fan, like an ultras or whatever you want to call it. I eventually, like over time, realized like whenever I watch football, if it's obviously not for like the game and it's a big game, it's good football. If I support a specific team, it's very often for a specific player. I realized with time that I enjoy watching players. There are very few teams I enjoy watching because of their philosophy, or for like the fact that they have history or whatever. Because I mean, how much of a connection can you have with a team unless you're born in that city or you're supporting them since you were a child, right?
Right.
So me being like, I'm a fan of Messi, obviously.
Yeah.
So me being a fan of Messi, I'm not as per se a fan of Barcelona, because like giving the best example, like how they treat their players / legends in like Suarez and stuff, like the fact they sold Neymar, etc. Like how can you be specifically a fan of the team or like the organization? Same thing with Real Madrid in a way. If you're a fan of Real Madrid, like the way they treat their legend, like Casillas and stuff, like it's difficult for me to talk about being a fan of a team, considering nowadays there's no real. Well, there's no loyalty on the player side, but there's also no real loyalty on the team side. You know what
Yeah,
I
it's a
mean? So there's
business.
very
It's a
few teams
business.
that you'd want to support. Like one of the few would be Dortmund, because like they're a very nice team. Like they have like amazing fans. And like a couple more teams like that. But in terms of supporting a team, not specifically. I like certain players, the way they play, and like I want them to do good. So around that, I want their team to win, obviously. So I'd more likely say players than teams. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a controversial topic, but it's the way I see things.
No, that's interesting because obviously you are from a nation where your league obviously might leave a bit to be desired. So typically, every time I've met someone in that position, they'll still be like, "No, I'm a diehard Barcelona fan." There's plenty of people like that are diehards that, but it's interesting that you share that outlook where not that I'm saying it's the right outlook because everyone has their own sort of experience with football teams, but I'm the same. Like I could never imagine myself supporting anything but Roma because I am from Rome. So no matter
Yeah,
what Roma does as an organization, I can detach the owners to the management to the actual club. So I'm from Rome, so I support Roma. But I've never met someone personally who said that, but also wasn't from a nation that gave them an opportunity to support like Barcelona. So I find that quite interesting. But if Bulgaria qualifies to the World Cup, do you feel any pressure? Because I mean, when I was growing up, you guys were at Euro 2004. I think you were in the same group as Italy as well.
yeah. I think that's probably the last international event we qualify for. We've been kind of going downhill for like 2 decades. So and even in 2004, I was like what 8? I don't remember watching a lot of football back then.
Right.
Um, I used to play football. Like I've been with the football at my feet since I remember, but like watching football per se, I don't recall. So even that international event, World Cup, I don't really recall. I know how we did and stuff because like eventually I just know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of I mean, I wouldn't say a dream of mine, but like I would really love to see in my lifetime us competing at a big international
Yeah.
that is not turned out to be, oh, let's do a Euros with 95% of European teams. You know,
Yeah.
that's not how I imagine. I'm like, if we qualify, let us actually qualify. But
For
yeah,
sure.
we're doing pretty bad right now. So
I remember
there's
when I was
there
growing up, there was Bojino, right? He was a Bulgarian,
yeah,
I think. Yeah.
yeah, he's kind of a meme at this point. Uh, Kind of imagine a combination of Balotelli's spoiled career and Bentner's meme status.
Yeah. He
It, it,
played in Italy. He was decent, but yeah.
Yeah, no. From what I've, because again, kid haven't watched football, but from what I know, he was really talented. Like when he was young, he played in Italy, he played in Juve, he played in City. But yeah, like like a lot of people and like players with talent, like kind of spoiled careers and stuff. So he plays in Bulgaria right now for like a few years already, I think.
Wow, he's still going. That's crazy. But you mentioned you played football, and I find that interesting because once I spoke to someone else in the community, and I remember they told me at certain points, I'm a goalkeeper. I play in goals in real life. And so that all made sense to me because when I would speak to him, the only thing he would focus on was like, if we were talking about things we'd wish were different in FIFA, I was like, oh, I can't believe the keeper coming. Like, I've never met someone who mentioned to me so many issues with goalkeepers. I'm like, why is he so focused on these goalkeepers? And it made so much sense because he's a goalkeeper in real life. Where did you play on the pitch if you had a preferred
Um,
position?
I've I've always been with a ball at my feet, but my parents never allowed me to play in a team or like practice with, like in an academy or
Yeah,
whatever. So I'm kind of a self-learned through FIFA Street mainly. So like kind of like in FIFA in real life, I'm also a skiller, so
yeah,
to speak, but like not one of those like selfish pricks who just take the ball and like run up the field, lose the ball, and
yeah,
like
yeah.
complain. But like I love to do the occasional like skill here and there. And like when people ask me like sometimes why I skill so much in FIFA and why I do the extra stuff and stuff, that's because that's how I play in real life, right? That's how I enjoy football. That's how I enjoy FIFA. Like I would try to nutmeg you in real life. Obviously, I'm not trying to do that in FIFA, but like
Right.
I'm still trying to pull off some skills and like do some nice, beautiful, fancy stuff. Play beautiful. So
Yeah.
where I play usually kind of striker, winger, because like I have like pace. Um, if needed, like behind striker and stuff, I can also pass, but forward positions mostly.
I like it. That makes sense. I mean, you see, like this is what I'm talking about. Like I have a similar thing. Like the way I play FIFA is similar to how I viewed the game in real life. I played when I did play. I was like in behind. I was either a striker and behind, and I was like just I had fun passing the ball. I love passing. We love passing here, and yeah, it's cool how always people always replicate it. I had a teammate of mine who I would make fun of because he walked like a duck almost in terms of like how tiny his steps were, and he would always just dribble in real life. And then the one time I played FIFA with him, that was his game style. Like he didn't care if he lost 6-0. He just wanted to run around me and like
To dribble, yeah. Nah, I
he,
get it. With Sterling and Robin with their animations and their like dribble
yeah.
animation.
Yeah. I mean, he would love it now, but this I'm talking like FIFA 08 times. This is what he
Yeah.
was doing. Another thing I wanted to ask you as well, I almost forgot, is because we're kind of similar in this boat. We're both, you're Bulgarian, I'm Italian, but we both lived abroad. I lived abroad. I grew up abroad basically my entire life. How was that for you? Where specifically did you live?
So I've lived in Kuwait, which is in Asia for those that don't know. I've lived in Brussels, and I've lived in Bucharest in Romania. So it's not like a crazy, but like it's a very decent amount of countries. And obviously I'm from Bulgaria, so I've lived in like half my life at this point, I think,
Yeah.
in Bulgaria. So I would say, yeah, 4 countries I've lived in. All like the 3 foreign ones for like 4 years. Actually, Romania was 2 years. And yeah, now I'm back home in Bulgaria. So
I've been to
yeah,
Sofia
that's where,
twice. Is that where you are in Sofia?
yeah, that's where I've been. That's where I'm born, and that's where I live.
You have like a favorite or one that you had to choose if you could, like, obviously besides your hometown, which was your favorite of the three?
Um, so Kuwait, I don't really remember because I was a
Too
kid.
young?
Like I was like 6 years old when we moved out from there. Um, Brussels, no, wasn't the biggest fan of it because just like I don't know. When you move in a foreign country, it takes time to adapt. And when you adapt to a school, that's when it kind of like kicks in. And like I changed school after the first year, so I had to adapt again,
Yeah.
and I had to learn German, so that didn't make it that much fun. Um, so Brussels wasn't my favorite either, and Bucharest. Now that I was in my conscience, like in my like, I would call it in a way adult life, like past 20. Um, Also wasn't my favorite just because like it was the first time I'm living somewhere where I don't speak the language. Obviously, Kuwait, I was a kid, so I didn't really need
Yeah.
to. It was the first time I'm living somewhere or like going somewhere where I don't speak the language. I don't know anyone, and I'm studying in 2 places and like playing competitive FIFA. So also not the best like um, moment of my life for my mental state. So it's like pick your poison, kind of, not like pick your favorite place.
Yeah.
But I would probably have to go with like Bucharest.
Fair. Fair enough. If is that what you attribute all your knowledge of languages? Because I think you're the only dude, maybe Dory as well, kind of similar, but like there's a German stream, Nightwatch is in there speaking German. There's a French one, he's speaking French there. How many languages do you even know?
Um, Fluently 4, and I started learning Spanish and Russian. Russian is not really my thing, so I kind of gave up on that for now. And I want to learn and improve my Spanish. Like I understand. Like if I go on a Spanish stream, like I understand basically everything. But
Yeah.
like speaking, like there's 2 types of like language learners: people that speak and they don't really care what they say if it's wrong or right, and like
Yeah.
that's one way of learning. And the people like me that like if I'm not sure I'm gonna say it correctly, I'm not gonna say it at all.
Yeah.
So I'm that type, and that's how I learned German. I was in a German school for 3 years, and it took me 2.5 years to say a word in German. And when I started speaking German, I spoke fluently. So I don't know. I just like it's a character, it's
You
like a
soaked it
personality.
in. No, yeah, it's definitely a character. I was watching a kind of, during this like pandemic thing, a bunch of these footballers are doing like live streams with each other. I saw Cannavaro doing a live stream with Marcelo because he played at Real Madrid before, so they must have met some way. And the way Cannavaro speaks Spanish is hilarious. Like, it's great Spanish, but every now and then he'll literally say a word that Marcelo didn't understand. He's just literally speaking Italian.
I know, I know. I mean, the thing is, like, after I learn Spanish, I want to learn Italian because, first of all, they're pretty. I mean, they are similar. Like, they're as similar as two languages can get ish in terms of like vocabulary. Like, when I listen to Italian, I understand Italian. It's
Yeah,
like when I listen to Spanish, I understand Spanish, and it's like they're all also like connected to French. It just makes sense, right?
yeah.
So I also want to learn Italian eventually, but I guess like it's also a double-edged sword. Like it's easy to confuse both languages, like with vocabulary and words and stuff.
For sure. I mean, I want to study Russian again because I could really learn it quickly, obviously, because I studied as a kid and I had gotten to the point where I was almost I wouldn't say fluent, but like I understood it perfectly. Then I stopped studying it for to do an easier. I to get an easier grade. I switched to Spanish just to secure easy grades. But I feel like, yeah, that's one of those that I could learn really quickly. But
So basically, cherry picking, right?
for sure, but I shouldn't have done it. It was cherry picking at high school level to do Spanish, get my easy grade, but I regret it now because now I kind of wish I knew Russian. But back to the football simulator thing, right? Obviously, you didn't start playing FIFA in what you would call more serious terms until like 14, 15. Now, did you play with friends before that? Maybe online with friends? Were you the best among them?
Yeah.
If you did?
So I remember like when I moved back to Bulgaria in the 12th grade. Um, I used to play FIFA with a friend of mine, and we used to play on PC. And I think it must have been. I think it actually could have been either 14 or 15. I'm not sure. And that was the first real FIFA I actually played with friends. 'Cause, like back when I had FIFA on my PlayStation 2, I used to play against the AI. I used to play like really, really casual.
Yeah.
And after school with like said friend of mine who's now a mod in my chat and occasionally jumps in my streams, we used to do these like series like a best of 21,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we would like sit and play FIFA for hours and like just playing derbies, like playing
Yeah.
Inter against Milan, Roma Lazio, like any like City United, and just like play with these teams and just have fun. And that's probably like if I have to remember a time I really had fun in FIFA, that's probably it.
Yeah.
And we used to play for hours upon hours. And with another friend, we also used to play FIFA, just like chilling with music in the background and stuff. But that was the time, probably the last time I played casually with friends. And I wouldn't even say I was like the best or like the better one. I was probably slightly better, but it was like a 55 to 45. It wasn't anything like it would be today. Um, and it's logical because like fast forward 3 years, FIFA 17, first weekend league, I'm gold 3. So I wasn't even that good to start with. So yeah, it's like I used to play FIFA casually with friends, but like not even that much.
Yeah. I'm the same. That's like FIFA up until the later stages for me, especially when I was in school, was playing with my friends. If we were like at the weekend, there was a sleepover or something, we do tournaments. What I will say is that I did think at the time that I was like better than them. I would win all the tournaments usually, just because. But I always didn't think I had like talent. I just knew that I played career mode in my spare time, and obviously that's not insane practice. But against people who don't play, if you just have a couple careers on legendary, you've got the basics
Yeah.
enough to be better and destroy everyone. Also, it was like different times and stuff. But the reason I asked that is because obviously you've now, for what most people would say, you've peaked in terms of FIFA ability compared to the general population because you are literally signed by an org and you've represented multiple orgs. Do you think that it's something that most people can achieve, or do you think that anyone who reaches pro or even like top 100 eventually, or elite 1 or even elite 2 or 3, like can you train it? Or do you think that everyone who gets to that certain level are just people who are naturally better and were naturally like just better than their friends growing up?
So it's really weird to me, right? If let's say if you're before a certain age, you can achieve it. So, for example, and it's a weird comparison, but like it in a way it isn't. I used to play like shooters a lot, like 5, 6, 7 years ago,
Yeah.
and I was pretty decent at them. I played a shooter like 2 months like during the summer and a bit before, and I was absolutely shocking. And that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's age, but like it's lack of practice. It's like I can't. I mean, shooter is a different skill and like skill
For
gap in
sure.
itself. There's a lot more skill gap I think than we have in FIFA. But like you can't pick up a shooter and like be good in 1 year. You have to have years of practice. With FIFA, it's like okay, you don't need specifically that much football knowledge, like as you should in a football video game. But I feel like if you're like 16, 18 latest, you can actually pick it up and become pro in 2 years with the way FIFA works, right? You
Yeah.
can with like the necessary amount of work. Obviously, if you've played football in your life and you're good at video games, because there's people that are just not good at video games. It's like you you're either not coordinated enough or you don't see like the games or you don't have the reflexes. It's just like we can't all be good at video games or like be good at everything. I mean, it
Yeah.
makes sense. If you're a gold one player, or let's say if you're a gold one player 2 years ago, you could be a pro now. Because I think if you're a gold one player now, in 2 years' time, it will be more difficult to be a pro because of how popular the scene has gotten. I mean, compared to 2 years ago, and how much more competitive it's become, and how much more people want to become pros, and there's a lot more demand than I would say supply. Put it that way. But the way FIFA works, yeah, you can actually sit on your butt and grind the game for 1 year, 2 years, and just it's mostly confidence, right? Like if you see you do good against good players, it gives you confidence, you get better, etc., etc., etc. It's kind of a snowball effect.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's something that definitely later on I have a few more questions on that. But before then, um you said FIFA 15, right, is when you started playing more seriously. When you say seriously, does that mean that that's when you started interacting with online communities?
Yeah. So that's a funny story as well because when I have been playing FIFA all my life, it's uh allegedly because that's what I've heard is the magic word to avoid trouble. Allegedly, my PlayStation, when my brother gave it to me or when he gave it back to me, I could play video games that he gave me for $1. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I had personally never bought a FIFA in my life. And after FIFA 14, like the summer between 14 and 15, I met a dude that told me, "Yo, do you know you can play FIFA like online for free?" And there was this game called FIFA World. And FIFA World was basically FIFA Ultimate Team online for free with like I think FIFA 13 gameplay or like FIFA 12 or FIFA 13 gameplay, something of the sort. And it was literally foot online for free. And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing!" And I downloaded it on my PC, and like I think they've shut the game down for a couple of years now. And it was my first experience with Ultimate Team, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" Right? I used to
Yeah.
love like I played with Bolly and Lukaku up top, and I don't know, it's just like I had fun. And that convinced me to buy FIFA 15 on PC for the first time, and I started playing online. I think mid FIFA 15, I started going to like small local tournaments in Bulgaria, like the ones you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, and I went to the first one thinking I'm the best, I'm gonna win it because I play FIFA online, right? Nah, I lost in like a quarterfinal loser bracket, and me being the competitive person that I am, I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. I'm gonna sit on my butt and I'm gonna become the best at this game. So what happens next tournament I go to, I win it, and that's when it kind of all started. I won that tournament, and then I started going to every tournament in FIFA 15, and I think I won. I wouldn't say all, but like most. But I was really the only one who played that much. And then FIFA 16, I still stayed on PC, and I played on PC. And I continued going to events. And towards the end of the year, I bought my Xbox with like the prize money I had and stuff. I've never like spent money on FIFA that I haven't gotten from FIFA. Like that's kind of a principle of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I had won some prize money that I had spared to get an Xbox, so I just got an Xbox, and I started playing Gfinity tournaments back then. That was the thing.
Yes.
And I learned. I remember I actually learned to play FIFA back then from Gorilla. I actually also remember matching him like a couple times in Gfinity Cups, and because I played like him, like it was kind of an even-ish game, which kind of gave me the confidence, which I was talking about earlier, that when you do well against like good players, you kind of play better and like you have motivation to get better. So FIFA 15 and 16 were kind of the turning points, and like me getting a console and just like playing these local tournaments in Bulgaria, because like that's kind of how I started off. So yeah, FIFA 15 and 16 are definitely like where I started and when I started taking it a bit more seriously, but again, hobby wise seriously, like competitive
Yeah, yeah.
person.
The offline one is funny to me because I've been to a couple offline ones in Rome, but they are jokes, dude. Like they'll be in random pizzerias. There's like 7 different TVs, all different sizes.
Yeah,
the
literally,
the
literally.
prize
But
pool is like I don't know, like a PS4, but it's just so much fun, and like the delay is crazy, and you're like, please put me on that TV because that one's a little
yeah,
faster.
I remember like, and to this day, like inconsistent gameplay is a mystery. But I remember FIFA 16, 17, and I mean, since then, the tournaments I've played in that are on TVs, like there are some clubs with some TVs that actually have good gameplay compared to others. Like to
Yeah.
this day, I do not like I vividly remember the TVs I've played on with good gameplay. To this day, like I remember asking them for like the specifics of the TV, the wiring, everything to figure out what causes good gameplay. Because like we were playing on TVs and it was hella responsive. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like playing on TVs is like, especially back then when you don't play on monitors, like you don't know what you're missing out on.
Yeah.
And eventually, I was like probably one of the only ones that invested in the gaming monitor and started playing more seriously. And then when I went to these tournaments to play on TVs, and when like I struggled because like I feel the delay and I feel the bad gameplay, and it always sounds like I'm moaning because like I'm the only one who realizes what's going on, right? Like people are just playing, and I'm like, this is bad gameplay. Like people look at me like you're out of your mind.
I don't know how people wouldn't realize. Like every single tournament I've been to a few 1v1s and a couple 2v2s. Dude, it's not even bad gameplay. It's beyond that. It's like something's going on in those places. I think people say there's too many PlayStations in the room. There's too many
Yeah,
controllers and
we've had that
Bluetooth.
theory as well. Yeah.
Dude, it really it feels like like you're walking around with players who weigh 30 kilos overweight. But back then it was head to head, right? What teams would you go for?
It was always the team that had Ronaldo in it. Obviously, like I said earlier, I'm a Messi fan, but like like in Bulgarian, we have a saying like you don't call. Actually, I'm not gonna translate the saying; it doesn't translate well. But like you don't like you won't you call it as it is, right?
Yeah.
Like Ronaldo in FIFA has always been like levels above Messi, and
Hmm.
like head you would always play with the team that has Ronaldo in it, and like it used to be Real Madrid, now it's Juventus. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know how it is like in 2021, but it's very likely to still be the same.
Yeah, I think head to head and competitive now is pretty hard to find unless you actually keep going to these offline LAN
Yeah,
tournaments, which now is impossible. What do you think about? Do you prefer head to head pro games, or do you think it's just better with Ultimate Team?
I I personally am not a fan of head to head because it's too slow for me. I don't like
Yeah.
slow paced FIFA. For me, I know there's a lot of players and like a couple of nations that like slow based FIFA, but for me, it's not realistic simply because it's not proportionate to real life football in the 45 minutes that you play. Obviously, if you make it proportional, the game is flying, so that's also not realistic. But we should have an in between ground, which right now I believe we're far from it because we kind of play on real life tempo on a game that's 45 6 minutes that is 7 to 8 times slower.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make like 7.5 to be precise. Like it doesn't make sense. So I'm not really a fan of head-to-head. I know this year I think they've made changes with like artificial chemistry styles on head-to-head to actually
Oh
give
yeah,
players more
yeah.
pace, more shooting and whatever. But I'm also not like a fan of Ultimate Team where you, in a way that at events you play with like the best teams in the game. Because for me personally, skill gap with the best teams is similar to a skill gap with like 75 rated golds. Like it takes as much skill to shoot with a team of the Ramos first time finesse from like 30 yards out as it takes to create a chance and miss with a 75 rated gold in front of the net. It's
Yeah.
it's one extreme to another. So for me, even at events with unlocked accounts or whatever, you should have set restrictions where, first of all, in a way, it is like kind of, I wouldn't call it skill because with social media nowadays and whatever, like people use kind of the same team, same players, like there's no creativity. But there's kind of a skill in building your team, making the sacrifices that you would need in certain positions, and then the skill with playing with the players that are not as good. For example, playing a Lozano is obviously not the same as playing with a, I don't know, like a Prime Garincha on the wing. So I don't know. That's how I feel. I think there should be an in between, but head to head is not really my cup of tea.
I agree. No, I agree completely. This is something that I don't think is talked about enough because people focus too much on the account being the same. When you hit the nail on the head for me, like if you have two 99 rated teams, yeah, the teams are even, but now you might have someone who's doing what they are doing with a 99 rated team, but they could also do it with 89 rated team, but the other guy might not be able to. And I think finding that sweet spot is key because obviously you don't want to do bronze weekend league. Maybe, you know, hashtag Harry or hashtag Fanatic Harry might disagree. He might love that because he always talks about his bronze weekend league, but that sweet spot is key. And I'm surprised that it's never talked about. People just focus on give everyone a lone R9 when I'm thinking, are we sure we want everyone running around with R9?
Because like for me, as like I got R9 a couple of weeks ago, and after the first couple of days I played with him, I realized it takes no skill to play with him. I mean, I've not been the best this year. I hit with R9 immediately, hit my second 30-0, and like started performing well against pros and stuff. It takes no skill because, and I thought about this last year as well, where I think as good as like the 5-star weak foot meta was and stuff in a way, it also felt skillless because, you know, like for example, if you play shooters, when you walk in a like a room or whatever you want to call it, like on a map, and you have like a corner on the left and on the right, that's called a 50-50 corner, and it's 50-50 corner because it's literally a 50-50 if the opponent is hiding on one side or the other, and it's a guessing game. And if you don't guess, you die. If you guess, you can kill them or they can kill you. So it's a 50-50 corner. 5-star weak-footed players is a 50-50 player. Like you get the ball in their feet, and then especially with like some of the skill moves that move really quickly or contextual agile dribbling, it's like it is a 50-50. You have to literally guess against a player like R9 to which side he's going to quickly scoop and shoot. So I don't know how much I'm a fan of that in terms of skill, because especially with like a player like R9, you just through ball, like you just pass it to his feet in the box and you shoot first time. And you know you can shoot on either foot because it's a 5-star weak foot, and I don't believe that takes skill. It takes skill to create the chance, but that's a whole other topic, like it's a deeper topic. But yeah, even this like 5-star weak foot thing is comparable to some other mechanics in other games for me.
I know, I completely agree. I mean, I always used to love having a 4-star weak foot player up top. And then I always thought there was something beautiful about still turning on his weak foot and they'd be surprised. And then if they really mess up, you have time to return back on the right foot, or you just take your chance with the left foot. But there's no more like deceiving. Like if you like last year, the Ben Yetters, those guys with the scoop and bop. Well, Ben Yedder couldn't scoop, turn on the run, but a Neymar, the scoop and bop just also added a whole new dimension. Without that scoop, it would have been 5-star still more meta, but it's more like FIFA 18 turning and shooting, whereas like last year with the bot. But I miss that feeling of deceiving on a 4-star weak foot. You know, that's something as well that I agree on. Do you have any crazy stories from a LAN? Because I remember when I went to a LAN once. Sometimes, like, it's rare, but sometimes people kick off and there's like tears. People calling me time wasters, and it's just so much fun. Like on PSN messages, people have a laugh, but when it happens in real life, dude, it's a different like galaxy of funny for me.
So, and I've learned to control this over time, more or less. I would say a lot more than I used to be, because, I mean, we're all salty when we lose on FIFA, but like the thing is, I'm salty and toxic when I lose undeservedly, which for me, in my eyes, happens more often than not, which is kind
Yeah.
of logical if you're at a high level. It's like, it's logical. But at events, I think I recall two events, and they were like in Bucharest both. One of them, my opponent, like, he slapped me up. He beat me 8-2, and he eventually lost the final against Tex. So he was
Uh-huh.
obviously a good player, but at the time, like, I hadn't heard of him. Nobody had. So for me, he wasn't like a known player, and I should not be getting smacked 8-2, especially with some of the goals and stuff. So that's when I was kind of raging, and like I stopped playing like 70 minutes in, because I was losing. I wasn't gonna win the game, and he like kept team pressing and like full sweating. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And like, I was pretty salty. So that was not. Yeah, that's when I actually got a warning from EA about my
Wow.
behavior. So that was with me actually working with EA on tournaments I don't qualify for. It was just a weird feeling. Like, that's when I realized, yeah, Ivan, get a grip. Like,
Yeah.
people that you work with give you warnings. Like, that's not how. That's not the impression you wanna be leaving. So that was one of them, and the other one was that is probably the funniest I've looked from the side. It was a Bucharest event, and like, we're playing Swiss, and I think we're playing an elimination game. I think we're both 2-3 or something, and you need to go 4-3 to advance. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing a German pro, and I'm actually not losing. I think I'm up by 2, and he scores like some ridiculous nutmeg bullshit goal.
Yeah.
And I just get up, and I start. You know how like gorillas, they like kind of hit the ground. I'm not kidding. You know how
Yeah.
gorillas, like, they stomp on the ground, they hit the ground. Most of the games are finished because we're in extra time. And I just like I take off my headset, like I throw it on the desk, and I just jump and start hitting the ground and screaming, but like screaming almost like rage tears. And I'm not even losing. Like, I'm a goal up. And then we go back in the game. He scores 90th minute. So it was like end of second leg. He scores 90th minute to tie it up. With another like kind of dodgy stuff, and I go ape shit. Literally the definition of ape shit. Like, I go ape shit again, and I end up putting in extra time. And even the goal I score, I remember it being bullshit, and I was also screaming and complaining about that. So from the side, especially like my now teammate and like best friend Lyrics in the scene, he was behind me, and he was like, "What are you?" It's like, you're begging to lose with like the way you're behaving. I'm
Yeah.
like, I was enraged. So that's probably my personal, like, I don't know, highlight moment in terms of FIFA behavior that's not in game. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
FIFA makes you a different person.
It does,
Nothing has
dude.
made me nothing
It's
has made me as angry or depressed as FIFA has in my life.
yeah, and
And
it's important
genuinely.
to never let that happen. I've had, I mean, I've seen, because a lot of people always say it's a you problem, and it's, I mean, there's obviously no one's perfect. Everyone's got their own things, but I don't think it's possible. Okay, that's not true. There are some people, and I really wonder, man, these guys are special because the calmness they have, but there's a surprising amount of people that would actually lose their nerves if they played at that pressure, at that level, and you have that
Yeah,
skill to control, and you still can't, even if you do everything right. And it's not even once, like, it's a series of things that need to happen, that do happen, and when they do, you're like, what are the odds? So I feel like
yeah.
a lot of people wouldn't understand, but I recently had a comment on my YouTube channel. I found it hilarious. He commented, "Wow, the level on console is garbage. You played on PC. Where do you stand on this? Is it true?"
I've played on PC, and I actually, because FIFA 15 was my first FIFA on PC, and once you get to Division 1, it's only cheaters. Like, it's literally only cheaters with programs that don't play the game. You load up in a game, they add their score to be 7-0, and they quit. Because like, you can like, yeah, you had literally, I think it was called a trainer. you just put that trainer on, you play, you push a button, the score on the cheater screen becomes 7-0. On your screen it's still 0-0. If it's a cool cheater, he'll score an own goal. So it's a 7-1 and 1-0 for both sides, a win. And then they quit or like they disconnect. But that's when
Cool
once you get
cheater.
to Division 1. Yeah. So that's FIFA 15. Me being naive, I thought EA would fix it going into 16. They hadn't. So the one more year of that, and like end of FIFA 16, I switched. And I haven't played since. So I have no idea what the level is nowadays. I very much doubt that there is a PC player that is as sweaty as an Elite 3 and above player on PlayStation. PlayStation is the worst abysmality of a console for FIFA that I have played on in my life, and is the biggest mistake of my career switching to PlayStation. This
Why
is
do you think that is? Why are
I do
PlayStation
not
players
know,
like
but this
this?
is horrible. I don't know. It may be due to the fact that now I'm playing on Milan servers and I'm playing Italians every weekend league, 25 games a weekend. But yeah, PlayStation, and it's also like a result, the natural result of like the competitive development of FIFA and like people becoming even more competitive, sweaty, etc., 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 and social media teaching everyone all the broken mechanics and whatever. Which that's also a topic of mine that I'm not a fan of the
Oh yeah,
social
we'll get
media.
into that. I had that written down as well.
Yeah. So it kind of makes sense, but I very much doubt that PC is sweatier than PlayStation or Xbox for that matter. But I just don't buy it. Yeah, I guess maybe they don't have cheats anymore on PC, which I would be surprised. Although I've heard from one pro that plays on PC to test the game out like before the patch rolls out on console that he gets like 3 losses a week in league and all 3 are against cheaters. So I
Wow.
guess they do still have cheaters. Um,
They do,
so
and I played PC I think a couple FIFAs ago just to get because they have unlimited early access. So for content, I was like, whatever, I'll
yeah,
just play it. And there were no cheaters in Rivals, but every draft I couldn't play draft. I couldn't play draft because I physically couldn't advance because
yeah,
they would rage quit on me. I wouldn't get the loss. I'd just be in a forever loop in round one. So
yeah, yeah,
it
no,
was
exactly.
crazy.
I get it. I get it. Like it came to a point when I was on PC that I downloaded the trainer myself. So when I'm in Division 1 and I see a 45 cam bronze team load up in Division 1, I'm like, okay, time to use the trainer and like let them DC so that I don't get banned for it. So
Yeah,
like I just put 7-0 as soon as the game starts and they DC and I'm like, cool, at least I get the win, right?
for sure. COD moved competitive to PC. Would you be happy? This would never happen, obviously, but hypothetically, would you be happy if EA was like, all right, everybody who's a pro, buy yourself a $2,000 PC. We're moving competitive to PC.
I think there's more of a chance for every pro to be. I think there's a, I wouldn't say a big chance because obviously I can't know, but like with PlayStation being a sponsor of the global series and the way everyone complains about kind of the structure of like FIFA esports and whatever, I would not be surprised if in the next what I know 2-3 years, everyone is forced to move on PlayStation to compete, um, which is logical because first of all the main player base is on PlayStation competitively,
Yeah.
and secondly, quite simply, the main sponsor is PlayStation. So I bet they do have some sort of upper hand when it comes to competitive. And yeah, like I can't imagine being forced to move on PC. That I can't, but I can imagine moving to PlayStation. And I think if both consoles get reunited in one competitive scene, that will become, I don't know, man. I've always been a fan of Xbox over PlayStation and like that kind of meme. But if you go from competing on PlayStation to Xbox, you're having a good time. That's what I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so moving to PC and like forcing people to spend like $2,000 on PC or whatever, I doubt it. But like making it a single console esport similar to COD, I can imagine. Yeah.
You would prefer that to happen on Xbox, though, obviously, because I mean, everyone, if it's true that what we both believe, because I agree with you that PlayStation players are on a different like stratosphere of sweaty. If
Yeah.
everything was competitive on PlayStation, if I didn't care about competitive, I would get an Xbox because at that point, I think it would
True.
reach unimaginable levels.
True. That's also a good shout. Um, what was your initial question right before you said that?
Well, the
Do I
initial
idea
question
or
was
what?
like, hypothetically, if it did move to PC, obviously it's never going to happen. It doesn't make sense. But would you prefer that? Because I remember there were discussions about, because when you, for anyone who doesn't know, every time there's a pro event, you have to divide it into PlayStation and Xbox, kind of like how in basketball you have the playoffs, East and West, and the best of the East faces the best of the West only in the finals, and Xbox players will only face a PlayStation player in the final. They never intertwine, and so a lot of people would say, why aren't these lines on PC? Obviously, it wouldn't work from a practice standpoint because you've got monitors which are 144p. Even on 60 hertz, it's just more fluid on PC. So you're practicing one thing at home and you get to a different game completely. But people were saying we should do it on PC because that solves the whole console problem. You can plug in whatever control you want.
Yeah,
And
that's also
so,
logical. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
people would be kind of logical. I mean, that's how they used to run tournaments back in like I don't know, like FIFA 11, FIFA 9, 10, 11. Um, but yeah, obviously I have no idea if PC is a viable option in any way. I'm personally not a fan of the PlayStation controller just because I can defend an offside trap at the same time because
yeah, the
of the way
D-pad. Yeah.
the D-pad is positioned. Um, but I don't know. I think it doesn't really matter if they've moved to Xbox or PlayStation. I think if the competitive scene becomes one, obviously you'll know who the OG Xbox players and the OG PlayStation players are, and you'll still have that discussion. But long term, I don't know. It will probably be better because then you kind of be like, oh, I didn't make the tournament on PlayStation, but I'm probably better than all the Xbox guys, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Our competitive scene is structured in a very weird way. Um, so I think console switching is one of our smallest issues at this point in time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On the Xbox versus PS4 front, obviously you have maybe a little bit of a bias because you do prefer Xbox, but how much truth from where you stand do you think that the whole statement that Xbox pros are way better? Obviously the track record is like a landslide by Xbox in terms of wins in cross console finals.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on that?
So it's a really weird one because prior to this year, I had three very good events in my career, and two of them, as an Xbox player, have been on PlayStation.
Hmm.
Only this year I've switched. So I've always thought that qualifying for an event is more difficult on PlayStation, but at the live event itself, it's easier. That's what
Yeah.
I've thought. Because especially on a game of FIFA where everyone can beat anyone, the more players you have competing in qualifiers, logically, the higher chance you have of losing a game. Just statistically, in the way FIFA works. So that makes PlayStation already harder to qualify for. But at events themselves, I believe the level on PlayStation is actually lower because of the let's say the top 1% of pros on Xbox. I really believe is better than the top 1% of pros on PlayStation.
Hmm.
But then at the same time, you have a couple of pros that are obviously they're really good, and this year they're probably better than me and stuff that have been average on PlayStation, but they go on Xbox and like they kind of dominate their first events. So there's an argument to be made from PlayStation players that, oh, look at our not so good guys go on Xbox and they dominate. What would happen if our top end guys go on Xbox? It would be even worse. So I'm still of the opinion that PlayStation is harder to qualify, but it's easier at events. And especially you have the top 1% of players like Tex Glossary Gorilla that are like naturally Xbox players. So yeah, I personally still think Xbox in terms of high end, but yeah, it's a touchy subject.
Yeah, no, I think it's different. Also because there was a time where, because I've played on Xbox as well sometimes, there was a time where I was like, is the gameplay, does this feel like slightly different?
It is
What's
different.
happening? So that's already a factor. I would also agree that the biggest names on Xbox, I think they have something extra. In some cases, I think there aren't many PlayStation players I'd back in a 1v1 against like a Dossary or a Tex, for
Yeah.
example. But also, what was I gonna say? That slipped my mind. But yeah, the gameplay different. Oh yeah, this is what I'm gonna say. I talk a lot with some people who are within the scene, and I've heard this before. Some claim that the Xbox Pros, they do the step overs this year. The step over is the new meta. They do the bridges, but you will find more games where that isn't prevalent on Xbox than you would on PlayStation. Whereas every PlayStation game is squeezing every droplet out of the meta. You might find a Razak game where you're like, oh, he's not doing as many step overs as I thought.
No, there's some logic in this because like last weekend, like fourth game, unseated. I play someone who bridges and L1 R1 bridges. I don't recall seeing like sweats like this on Xbox. Like game two, I have someone doing step overs, but like not doing like abusing them. It's like yeah, PlayStation is a different breed. Like it's a different kind of sweat. I think similar to the competitive thing that I just said, like qualifying versus at events. I also think on PlayStation, it's it's easier to get more wins than Xbox. So it's easier like to get a 29, but it's much more difficult to get to get top 100 because of this again sheer amount of players that play the game, which logically makes top 100 be 30 wins or like 29 high skill rating. And again, in a game that anyone can beat anyone on a good day, um, your chance of losing one of those 30 games is high. And if you lose one, you're already not in top 1/200. Whereas on Xbox, you can lose two and still get in. So again, weekend league, depending on the point of view, depending on what you're aiming for, is easier or more difficult. It's easier to get more wins, but like a set number of wins is easier. But since top 100 is a certain percentage, that makes it more difficult
Yeah.
because one like 0.5% on one console is a lot more than 0.5 on the other, and like you know what I mean. You kind of
Yeah,
get it.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna do something a little unprofessional right now. I drank too much water. I need a 45-second break. I'm gonna be right back. All right.
No worries. I'm gonna talk to chat.
All right. You got guys chat. Quick questions for Ivan as I'm taking a quick bathroom break.
Um, I saw Nelly earlier. I don't know if Nelly's still here though. Nelly earlier asked for some highlights for I don't think he is. Yeah, shame. Um, icons not in FIFA. That's the thing. Like I'm not. As I said, like I didn't watch football that much as a kid, in terms of like enough for me to be able to judge players that are not in FIFA and like give ratings and stuff. Well, that you have a doc emote actually. You have a new doc emote. Um, but yeah, so it's like I can't really judge icons, especially rating wise. Like I think EA have done a weird like a not good job with some of the icons. So let alone me, that's not like um I would say educated enough to judge some of the players by their rating and stuff. Um, I know someone who got 29 this weekend, but he isn't even top 200 in Europe. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Would you like stipulation weekend league? I actually wouldn't mind it. Yeah, I would not mind it. Obviously, I have a massive advantage right now. I have a better team than probably 25 of my opponents, if not more. But it would be like something fun to do. Yeah. Will you see me club? Yeah. What are you thought with all the 100 special cards? Uh, I actually don't mind it. Like for me, content for me is one of the best things EA does in terms of promos, in terms of content, especially like for competitive, like for squad building with restrictions. It just adds variety. So I like that as well. But unfortunately, it on one side and it impacts the gameplay when you have promos and like servers, and on the other
Very
side,
badly. Very
yeah,
badly.
and on the other side, like gameplay, just full stop.
That was actually
How?
a good moment to break, because now we get into the second phase
Yeah.
where we covered everything up until 16, some tangents here and there that like spilled over, but that's fine. Let's start the new era with a new era afoot. FIFA 17 was pretty much a completely different beast from the previous games, new engine, but
Weekend
wait,
league.
sorry.
Weekend league.
Weekend league, new esports, everything. So FIFA 17 comes out. Nightwatch is sitting there in his room. He's reading all these announcements. He's seeing esports. He's seeing 40 and O's. He's seeing people qualifying through foot champions. What are your thoughts during FIFA 17 of the
My
game, of the everything? Yeah.
None. I'm a gold 3 player first weekend league. I got 22 wins out of 40 or like 21. And I think I stopped at gold 3. I think I stopped at gold 3 because it was better than gold 2. A couple weeks later, I think I got gold 2 and gold 1. So I
Mm-hmm.
was a gold player in the first month of weekend league FIFA 17. My first top 100, and I'm not kidding, because even in FIFA 17, I used to watch Inception, so I kind of knew about like the good and bad gameplay thing. Like I I was realizing it, but I also saw it from Inception, so it was like kind of a double thing. Like I knew what happens, like what is the result of it, etc. So I remember my first top 100 on Xbox was when I played all my games between 12 and 6 a.m. and I played them on good gameplay. I'm not kidding. I still have the tweet. I can find it out. I played all my games in the morning to get good gameplay, and I got top 100. And I tweeted back then, back when I was a literal nobody, this is what happens when you play the game as it should be played or whatever. Like I just played in good gameplay, and I played really well, and I got top 100.
Yeah.
And that was my first and only weekly top 100. And the last month of FIFA, and well, the last week of FIFA, I got my second top 100 weekly and my first top 100 monthly. I opened the icon pack, like the monthly reward pack with the icon, and I deleted FIFA. So that was my FIFA 17 kind of story in terms of international. I just played weekend league, and I was an absolute nobody in like competitive wise. Also, like I have obviously no hope to get top 12 for the month when I cannot get elite one. So yeah, back then again, it was just like something I did for quote unquote fun as a hobby competitively, with absolutely no aspirations of or like hopes of doing anything on FIFA 17. Especially since I didn't like that game either, but that's another topic.
Yeah. No, that's so funny. You mentioned the connection thing. I think those were, dude, 17 servers in the afternoon were some special times. And I never remembered a game or playing post midnight actually made that much of a difference. So I ended up playing at a certain point. I figured that out, and I just played post a certain hour, and I hated it, man. I hated how stressful it was in terms of just finding good gameplay. I didn't care about winning or losing. I had a lot of fun that year in terms of just trying teams. I had SPC Jonas in my team for like 3 months, but the servers were so poor that year. It was such a shame. Which brings us to the esports qualification, like you mentioned. If you guys didn't know and you're listening to this, unlike now where to qualify, you have to first get verified in Weekend League. And once you do get verified in Weekend League, if you even have enough pro points that you obviously get via Weekend League, you can then qualify via playing other verified players. Back in the day, in FIFA 17, it was purely off of Weekend League. So you would have to go, they would say, okay, the month of December, for example, counts for qualifications. You have 4 Weekend Leagues in December. You're probably going to have to drop out of 120 wins, because it was 40 games per weekend. So that's 4 times. Wait, no, it could have been 160 then. Yeah, it could have
Yeah,
been 160 depending on the month. No, it was 160. You would have had to drop 158, maybe 157 on PlayStation. I'm not sure exactly. Out of 160 games, it was purely on Weekend League. Looking back on it now, do you think there has been significant progress on that and moving the qualification away from Weekend League and more into what we have now?
100%. Like it's meant to be a lot more stressful and more draining. Like obviously, in terms of like selfishly, you would want to play out of 160 games like 100 casuals and
Yeah.
like just like stomp over them. But like it's matchmaking luck, and you don't really deserve that qualifications. Whereas now with the new format, playing pro versus pro, it is mentally like really draining, but it's a fair way to do it, especially when you had Swiss and like it was. I think FIFA 19 where they changed the qualifying ways, and FIFA 20 really good format, and like there were no complaints there. Possibly the addition of loser bracket, which also did happen eventually. So I think we were on the right path, and like everything moving now online, we've taken a couple steps back. But let's see what happens next year. But yeah, FIFA 17 horrible. FIFA 18 top 64 in like specific months was, I guess, better than top 12, but still again weekend league. So yeah, I think we've actually gone better, like gone forward on that. Even the format now with double elim pro versus pro is better than weekend league. So
Yeah. I think the week I had some friends who qualified and almost came close to qualifying. I just felt bad. Like I was stressed out for them as they had to play these 40 games, and like the thought of your qualification slipping away because you lose against a player who wouldn't even be in a qualifier nowadays, or a disconnect. It was kind of crazy that was how it was done, but I guess it was a learning experience from that FIFA 17 year of Pro FIFA. If you did follow it, was there anything that motivated you? Was there a game, a moment where you thought, I wanna kind of emulate that gameplay? Obviously, you mentioned Gorilla from FIFA 15, 16. You liked watching him, but was there anything in that 17, maybe just simply watching how cool those events looked? Was that something that brought fire to your belly for the next year?
it's a weird one because I don't remember FIFA 17 how much esport I watched. I probably did. I just don't recall it, and like I don't recall specific games. I think I've watched more FIFA 17 esports in the last 2 years, just like going back games and just watching some classics, quote unquote, than I did back then. Um, but there was no event really where I'm like, oh, I see this, I want to be there, right? I think that came with the first event. I actually qualified for myself, and like you're home after that, and you're like, I want to do that again. I just want to do that again, and that's when it actually starts. Like that's when it started. I remember actually qualifying for the first event like through Weekend League on FIFA 18.
Yeah.
It was so the qualification month was the second one of the year, and for the first month, like 2-3 weeks of it, I was at my parents' place where, ironically, I was there around Christmas, and it's still the same internet and playing on TV. So back then I got like I think FIFA 18 was still 40 games, wasn't it?
Yes, it
So
was.
out of the 40 games, I think I got like Elite 3, Gold 1, Elite 2, something like that at my parents' place. So like again, like my FIFA 17 level basically, with occasionally Elite 1s and stuff. I go back home the last weekend league before the qualifying month, and I remember matching Rocky back then, who he was 98-0 at that point. I guess it was the second last weekend league of the month. So yeah, he was 98-0, and I remember, and he was world champion back then. Well, the Ultimate
Yeah.
Team world champion, and I remember beating him, which gave me the confidence, like some confidence that I'm not. I mean, I wasn't random because again, FIFA you can lose to like worse players, but even then, beating like a player like Rocky, you're still not a completely random. You know what I mean?
Well, because you also have like you're beating Rocky after you went 39 and 40, maybe, I don't know. So it's like you didn't just finish 20
Yeah,
wins
exactly.
the week before.
I'm just playing well, right? I didn't completely rig him. I'm playing well, and like I kind of deserve my win, right? I'm 17-0. He's 17-0. It's like it's not a complete rig. And the last week before the qualifying month, I matched another pro. He was beating me 5-0, and I ended up winning that game on pens after 6-6. So these two games kind of gave me some sort of confidence that I'm actually decent at this game. You know, like might as well give it a shot. So I remember playing the whole qualifying month of November, laying on my bed on my stomach, and putting the monitor on a small chair in front of me, and just laying down on my side, on my belly, like absolutely chilling. Something I could never do nowadays. Um, and thinking back on it, that's just crazy.
I remember you
And
telling me that. I was like, what?
yeah, and I vividly remember my fifth game of the first weekend league. I got an inactivity disconnect because someone rubber banded me,
Oh, yeah.
and I didn't know you get 3 warnings until you get kicked out for being inactive. So I just like every time I saw the message, I just flicked my controller, and on the third message, it doesn't give you a message; it just kicks you out. and I got a loss in the qualifying month because of a prick like that, and I was so upset, and
Could be the
somehow
difference. It could be the difference.
exactly now it was going to be the difference because the last weekend league of the month of the qualifying month, I matched Sakul 3 times. We matched 3 times with Sakul in the same weekend league.
Wow.
I think I won 2 games. He won one, and I finished 44th. He finished 45th in the month. So if one of us
Wow.
had won one more game, the other one wouldn't have made it. It's just like margins, right? It's just like it's real margins. But I just remember that specific qualifying month because that's when it kind of all seriously started. And it's just like fun times. It's like good things to remember.
That's actually insane. Like, because for a viewer's perspective, not only is it unlikely to match a pro, it's even more unlikely to match a pro of that level. Someone like Sakul is like a qualifying machine. And on top of that, you match him 3 times in the same weekend league. I mean,
Like
dude.
he was streaming, like he streams almost every like competitive game he plays, and back then I obviously didn't know who Sakul was, and after the third time we matched, I went in his I actually found him online and I saw that he's streaming, so I went on his past broadcast at that time to see like his reactions to when we match, because except playing me 3 times, I think he played a couple more pros or like competitive like sweats, and he was really unhappy, which like matching me and being unhappy also kind of gives me a confidence boost because in my eyes I'm no
Yeah,
one. Like,
for sure.
in my eyes, I'm no one. So if someone who's that good matches me and they're like, oh no, not again, I'm like, oh, thank you. um, so yeah, it was a series of fortunate and unfortunate events because I was back then a complete random, a nobody, qualifying from Bulgaria in the month of the 4G scandal.
I
So you can
remember.
imagine
Yeah.
how, like, from that took a toll on me mentally already because, like, in my eyes, people would think, "Oh, that's how we qualify," right? In my mind, that's what people think. Although barely anyone thought that, but in my mind, that's how it looks, right?
Of
So
course. I
it,
mean, for
kind of,
context sake, at the time there were rumors, allegations of players and YouTubers and pro players of the region where of countries neighboring and maybe the same countries of Ivan, of players using 4G to get free wins in weekend league, right? So obviously he was he thought he was associated because he was up from
yeah,
the same
and
place.
it just added extra pressure on me because I just imagine people like having more eyes on me to perform because they're thinking, oh, that's how we qualify. Like, obviously, let's see if he's actually legit or not. And it just like added more pressure. And like back then, I mean, right now I've gotten better, but I'm still not where I want to be mentally in FIFA. But back then, I was like zero experience, first event, like I'm nobody, etc. So that definitely did not help.
Right, right, and I feel that, especially because back then in FIFA 18, I was good friends with Yimi. He was often in the parties, and I remember you ended up matching him in a game because for some reason you were in a PlayStation tournament.
That was a game to qualify for the World Cup.
Exactly.
One of the many I have choked.
And I remember his story. He told me, and I hope he doesn't get mad at me for saying this, but I think pre-game, before you guys were walked on the stage, both players would be sitting there in some special area or something. And I think he mentioned how you were like pacing back and forth, right? So I remember
So
thinking, damn, he must have been like under serious pressure at that point.
that's a funny story because that's that's one of the few games in my career that I've had to play for the World Cup that I've not won. Um, and like again, no disrespect to him, I think he would agree, but I think him matching me and me matching him to qualify for the World Cup is a favorable matchup for both. Obviously, to considering I was not the best seed going into the knockouts, to match Yimi, I'm happy. And Yimi also being not the best seed to match me, he's also happy. So we're both like kind of, oh, that's a good matchup. I
Yeah,
remember
you'll both
playing back.
take.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember that was FIFA 18 playoffs, which I mean, how I got there is a whole different story. It's very very long, but
How did you get there?
it's
Because
like
you were an Xbox player, but you ended up playing the playoffs on
yeah.
PlayStation.
So I was in Barcelona FIFA 18. I didn't get out of the group stage. Didn't qualify for Manchester. Those were the two FUT Champions Cups in the way to qualify. And then you had the last chance weekend, like where
Yeah.
exactly one of the biggest rigories in like FIFA esports in terms of qualifying for the biggest event of the year. Crazy. Anyway, so in order to qualify for that, you need to on Xbox you needed to be top 23 for the weekend, and you would literally qualify for the biggest event of the year. And I was 39-0, and I lost to a fellow Bulgarian pro.
Oh
So
yeah, I remember that. Oh
so
no.
like that was a very it was a tough time. It was a tough time. But Coca-Cola, being like sponsor of FIFA, had a few licensed tournaments across the world from which the winners would qualify for a small tournament between each other for one playoff spot on PlayStation. So they had tournaments in Bulgaria, Norway, Denmark. I wouldn't say Saudi Arabia, but like one of those countries in that part of Asia, and in in France, and probably a couple more, but they didn't end up coming to the event. It was a weird one. I don't know. So at the event, which was between the Xbox and the PlayStation playoffs, so it was in the day in between, we played all five of us in a group stage and then against each other in knockouts to determine the winner. But luckily for me, out of those five players, two of them were Maestro and Aga, who already had qualified for the playoffs. So it was basically three players playing for one playoff spot. And those three
Wow.
players, the other ones, were like Elite 3, 2, a bit Elite 1 players, right?
Mm-hmm.
So surprisingly, I ended up actually topping the group with Maestro and Aga, which already automatically qualified me for the playoffs because I matched Maestro in the final. Because it was like first against second play in a final to determine the Coca-Cola winner. So since Maestro had qualified for the playoffs, regardless if I win or lose, I take that spot. So I made the playoffs on the following day. I rematch Maestro, I rematch Aga. Very long stories. And I play the game to qualify against Yimi. So I'm practicing, obviously, between my last Swiss game and my knockout game, because of the way it was broadcasted, I had like 6 hours. So I even went back to the hotel, took a nap, took a shower, etc. Went back, and I that was my first. That's when experience came into play, because I warmed up backstage. Like they had consoles and they had a setup for you to warm up. I warmed up backstage, and it was probably I wouldn't say but like top 3 quickest gameplays I've ever played on. It was the most responsive thing I've played on FIFA 18. It was I was practicing against my coach, like a friend of mine, and I was doing like skill moves, elasticos, every attack. Like when the game feels quick and responsive, like skill moves they come naturally. You just
Yeah.
like it's like when you play in snow, you don't do skill moves. You just
No,
like
it feels bad. It feels wrong.
exactly. But when you play in like a good like the football real conditions, you just like want the ball at your feet. You have more control. So in FIFA, it's kind of the same. When you play in slow gameplay, you don't really do skills. Like it doesn't feel right. Um, and I remember like I was doing skills. I was like, because the winner between Yimi and myself played Nicholas, and I was already like, okay, in this gameplay, you give me Nicholas, I'm confident. Like that's how well I was playing. That's how confident I was. And then we go on stage, and it's a slugfest.
Yeah.
And that's where experience came into play because it I almost couldn't snap out of my let's play 200 kilometers an hour mindset. So I started off like this. He went 2 goals up, and on FIFA 18 you couldn't really press and like get the ball back.
Yeah, it was
So
very,
again,
very difficult.
that's how experience came into play, and like he was always 1 or 2 goals ahead, and just when I bring one back, he scores one more, etc. So yeah, that he beat me, and yeah, that's when kind of experience came into play.
But overall, I mean, considering how 17 went, you went into 18, you qualified to quite a few events. You built up quite the I would say the curriculum for your first year in events. Did that going into 19 like really boost that confidence? Did you feel like when FIFA 19 came out, you're like, I'm just ready. I'm ready to deal with pretty much anything.
It's a weird one because again, like the game is different. and it's a completely different game, and it's like it depends. It really depends on your mindset. And my mindset is more rational in a way that I know that just because you're good on 18 doesn't mean you're going to be good on 19. Which obviously being rational like that doesn't help with like your confidence. Like you know in your mind, just because I'm good at this, I won't be good at the next one, which doesn't help you confidence wise. But someone who doesn't realize that and who thinks, oh, I've been good on 18, I'll be good on 19, they immediately have that confidence advantage over you, which is so important in FIFA and just like in competitive in general and like in life, if anything. So it like I didn't have that confidence, and that's one of my issues. Like I never really have that confidence. It's like it's kind of a roller coaster with me with like confidence and like either the highest of highs or the lowest of lows. And when I have my highest of highs, I play really good at tournaments. And when I play the lowest of lows, I like get Swiss or I don't qualify. And it's never a question of ability. It's always been a question of confidence.
Well, yeah, of course, because depending on your confidence, you might read plays differently. You might be more aggressive. If you're not confident, you're thinking, I'm just gonna play and hopefully I can get a 1-0 win. It's like you're already on the back foot.
Doubt yourself, and it's like if you're just confident, then I don't know. It's so much about confidence, so much because I know like rationally, I know I have the skill over so many people, but I also know rationally I don't have the confidence, or like at times I don't have the confidence to be able to show that, or like the correct like to take the correct decisions. So it's like one of the biggest skills you can have in FIFA is patience.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is I don't know. I'm not a fan of it, but yeah, one of the skills you can have in FIFA is patience. And the way I play football in FIFA, I don't have that at times. But when it comes naturally, like when I'm calm, I play really well. But it's a mindset thing, right?
So say you lose a game 5-1, right? Not ideal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change anything. It's not like after you lose a game 5-1, all of a sudden it's Space Jam and someone sucks away your talent. You're still the same dude. How do you obviously, and I'm not saying you have the answer to this because you even said it yourself that it's an ongoing struggle with keeping it up. But what do you try to do personally to be like, it is what it is. You lost 5-1. It doesn't define me, because obviously it can be hard because there's so many people who follow esports, who just don't understand, and they'll you might get tons of comments. I mean, hell, your Champions League games have millions of views on YouTube on in the Champions League channel or wherever it is. So you're gonna have an echo chamber of people making comments saying, oh, you got uploaded there, but they have no idea what they're talking about because they don't play at that level. So how do you kind of ignore anyone who may criticize you and stay true to yourself and keep that confidence going?
I've actually learned to deal a lot more lately with like, be it internet trolls or like backseat gaming or whatever, which is massive for me because I've always been inclined to engage with idiots online, and it doesn't really amount to anything. So that I don't mind. To go back to your question, what do you do to kind of like reset after a 5-1 win, etc.? I don't really know. I don't really know for myself. Like I haven't seemed to have found the correct recipe for that because I don't know. I get in my own, like my main issue is I get into my own head, right? I have no bigger opponent than myself mentally when it comes to playing FIFA. It's like even the first qualifier this year, I'm winning 3-0 at halftime the first leg. And halftime of the second leg, I'm 7-3 down. Tell me how that worked.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I replayed that guy in the Blackie Cup, and he rage quit when we played. So yeah. I mean, it went to 3-3 back then with 3 goals that if you see them, you can do a video on each one of them. But it's like it's still 3-3 at that point. But in my head, he's like, in my mind, he has the advantage mentally in game, etc., etc. So again, I get in my own head, and I can see 3 goals in like 20 in-game minutes. So it's like mentally is where, I mean, I have done progress since I've started competing and since last year, etc. But there's still more to be required. And I do feel like my teammate helps me a lot. And like, I think, I mean, without lyrics, I wouldn't really be in competitive FIFA. Because he's the one who kind of brought me into it back then through Twitter. And Champions League was also big. Like he had a big part in it, like just being there, kind of. And still nowadays, like Dan and lyrics both kind of like help with this. And it's like, I don't know, if I find a magic solution, I think it's to each their own, right? It depends on just your personality and your character in life also, that kind of transitions into anything else, be it FIFA, be it football, be it anything else you do. So I don't know, that's why teams have esports psychologists, right? To help them deal with those kind of things. So I'm trying to figure out something that works for me. I have a couple things that do, so I'm trying to stick with them. But yeah, so far there's nothing that works every single time.
For sure. I mean, that's a completely unexplored territory for me in the esports scene, because I was going to ask you about the coaches after I asked you about Champions League, but whatever, we'll just do it now. Because Lyrics obviously has coached you a lot in certain events. He's also a very good friend of yours. Do you think, well, obviously you already answered that. You said it's a vital role for you to have like a good coach behind you if you're ever playing and you need one. But do you think, what does the coach do for you? I think what's the best purpose for a coach, for anyone who might be like, you know what, I could maybe do coaching? Is he really there mostly for emotional? If you had to give like a percentage, he's there 80% emotional, 20% tactical help. Does he ever be like, switch to this formation, do this, he's going down the middle? What are you relying on? Do you just need someone to gas you up?
So to each player is different, I feel, because for me personally, my coach, like there's very few people I would take tactical advice from. Like I pride myself of like knowing the game kind of in and out, tactically knowing what works against what, etc. So there are very few people that could tell me to do something and I'll be like, yeah, okay, I will do it, like to follow it blindly. So for me personally, I kind of need that emotional support, and not even to gas me up, but like to calm me down, if you will. Like just reassure me for the simplest of things, to say, oh, you did that well done. Like I just do a successful tackle and they're like, well done. Like that's like the kind of stuff I need, like really basic. Whenever I coach lyrics, for example, he needs someone to tell him like when the 45th minute approaches, right? For him to know when it's the end of the half. Like to each their own, like everyone has their small things. Some people need a tactical coach to literally tell them what formation to play, like what their opponent is doing, how to counter it, which also obviously helps with everyone, because you don't see the game when playing the same way you would from the side.
Yeah.
So it depends what your strengths are as a coach, and like as a player, it depends on what you need, right? Because a player like Maestro, I feel has one of the best mentalities when it comes to FIFA, in terms of like Maestro, for example, because he's full of confidence. He's always like really good at FIFA. So maybe if he has a coach, which I don't really recall him having a consistent coach, would maybe be like more of a kind of, I would say, either like emotional, like just to chill and have someone to talk to, or tactically someone to tell him what to do, although I doubt it, because he is still one of the best players. So it's again their own.
Fair enough. Now, FIFA 19, in my opinion, you qualified to the coolest event there ever has been, right? The Champions League. Some of that, before we get into the actual games, how was it receiving such, because you guys got some crazy packages, like with some crazy stuff in it. You got to go to the Champions League final. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, just from the very beginning, from the moment you started the qualifiers to getting there, it was a journey. Because when the qualifiers started, after the second game, I'm like, there's no chance I qualify. And that's when lyrics actually came into play, because he was coaching me in the qualifiers as well. He told me to try a specific tactic in a specific formation. And I was playing so bad that I'm like, might as well try it. I then went undefeated in the group stage. You had to win one knockout game in the you had to win one knockout game in the knockouts to qualify. and it was a best of 3, and I won the last game on pens to qualify for the Champions League. So at that point already, your heart is like racing. And you qualify for the event, like the first part of the event where it's like the 64 players. You get it in the venue, and they just start playing the Champions League theme, and oh my goodness, goosebumps! It was just being there and like getting in the venue, which wasn't anything special, right? It was kind of a big venue, it had good lighting and stuff, but like a venue like any other. But they just put the Champions League theme, and everyone just walk into their seats, and you can just feel the vibe. It was, oh my god, that is absolutely, that's probably one of the best feelings I've ever experienced. And then you started playing, obviously. First day was horrible, and thankfully, I think PSN went down, or EA servers, like something went down, which forced them to postpone the games for the next day, like more games for the following day, which for me was a complete blessing because I was awful. And then the next day, somehow I found my hands, and I think I ended up winning every game, including then like the famous game against Sex and stuff, and qualifying. And that's probably the only time in my life where something happens, and the cliche overused expression "I can't believe it" was in reality true. Like, it was, for around 30 minutes after that game, I did not know like what had really just happened. I was just walking around staring into the abyss, just like stopping, sitting on a chair, just like staring, just like leaning over a table and be like, literally, like it's like I was like drugged. It was a crazy feeling. And then obviously getting to Madrid when the event approaches, like the top 8, and you get all that like that merch, that swag and whatever, like the personalized stuff with your names on it. Amazing feeling. Like, that's one of, I personally am a fan of like some goodies or like some personalized stuff. So I really love that. Most of it is actually here in my room. Like, I'm looking at it right now. So it was really cool. Like, even like the Champions League final thing wasn't as cool because, well, first of all, it was probably one of the most boring finals in recent years. Which, I mean, after
which one was it again?
Liverpool Tottenham.
Oh yeah.
So, first minute, there's a pen, and I'm like, cool, that's gonna be the best final like ever. And then 80 minutes of nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, even before we get to the real life final, obviously, like the Champions League tournament itself, I was really nervous. Like, the first game I played, I was really nervous. Like, you can see that by my gameplay and stuff. I was extremely nervous because, again, I put pressure on myself that I should be winning that game. So, and like, it wasn't as clear as I thought it would be, so I got even more nervous. And then I had to wait so long for the semifinal that it came to a point where I'm like, I literally don't care what happens, just let me play. And I had no pressure. And that's when I played well. And that's when I dominated, and then the famous final. But overall, like, the Champions League experience, I don't know, it was one of a kind. And like, it's, if a miracle doesn't happen and I don't end up winning it in my life, that will be the biggest regret I have in my FIFA career.
Yeah, that must be like tough because it's one of those where I feel like beforehand you might sign for it saying, I come in second place, but once you're actually there, you're like, I'm too close.
Yeah.
I need this.
It's like, are you happy that they got to a final?
They signed for it before the season starts, but once they're there, you need to win it. Otherwise, it's going to be a massive regret. Especially how they won the Ajax game, and how you coincidentally in your journey you played Tex, and I wanted to ask you about that because arguably 18 and 19 Tex, you could make the argument he was a peak at 18, 19 he won an absurd amount of events.
Yeah.
Right. So when you were facing him, you beat him, and to beat Tex at his peak must be like the best feeling, right? Because you beat him, and not only did you beat him, but the last 15, 20 minutes or so, you had a 2-goal lead. So it wasn't like you still probably had to clench some butt cheeks, but like
clench some butt cheeks.
You had
a different breed, but
You had a lot of room, you know.
yeah, I think
So
it was more of a tactical mistake on, I don't know, his or his coach's part or whatever, where he was one goal down and he was playing pressure, right? If he hadn't played pressure and it was just waiting to create a chance, I think he was also, because I watched the game back. I occasionally watch my Champions League games back, and I just think he was also kind of, I wouldn't say nervous, but like he wasn't playing like he normally would. Like he was doing some weird decisions.
yeah,
Towards the end of the game, which is normal. Like you're kind of losing to what I would call myself in his shoes a random. Like say it as it is. Like I'm
yeah,
I'm an analyst at EA events. Like I barely compete. You know what I mean? But nah, it's a weird one because like with me analyzing, I don't know. It's either one of those where okay, it happened once. It's a rig. We've played twice since then. He's beat me twice. But it's like I've watched so much of Tex on FIFA 19, like especially when I've been an analyst and like I've literally analyzed his gameplay. That he also kind of knew that. I feel like that's what I feel since we haven't really talked about it because touchy subject, but I really feel that he knew I knew his strengths and it kind of gets into his the same way I get in my own head every single time. I feel that was probably one of the few times he's like, should I try something more, something new, something different, something I don't normally do? Because he knows how I play. Whereas the reality is, if he plays how he normally plays, like I don't think there's a contest because that's how good he was, right?
yeah.
But for some reason, I was not nervous that game. I was not nervous. I was like, when I watched that back, that's probably one of the best games of FIFA I've ever played, obviously. And it's again a matter of mentality, a matter of confidence. Like you play a game where you you have no pressure on yourself and nobody expects you to win. Like you have nothing to lose. And if you play well and you're actually winning, things can only go in your favor from there on. So again, mentality. I played against Sex so much better than I played in the quarterfinal against Alan Avi, and like it shows in gameplay. It shows in the way I play. So
Did
it's
you?
all it's all
I
in your head.
remember. I remember speaking to you in FIFA 18, or sorry, 19, and that's the first year we had the new tactics, the game plans, and I remember vividly you telling me, "I wish I could have 15 game plans." And so, based off of that, I've always wondered when you did play Tex, and obviously you studied him, and I knew you would have been as prepared as anyone into going in that game. Did you have a specific Tex tactic? Did you have a formation, something set up specifically just for him?
That's a funny thing. Remember in the qualifying thing where I told you lyrics told me about a tactic that I should use?
Yeah,
That was the famous 4-4-2 comeback on strikers.
yeah,
Uh, that was when nobody used to use that, except I think Spiteri was one to use it, and maybe a couple more, Tuga. But lyrics told me about it, and first I brushed it off, right? But then mid Champions League qualifying at home, I turned it on, and immediately the next game, my opponent had 0 shots. It was actually so cool. He beat me the first leg, and I tried to switch it the second leg. He had 0 shots. I still lost that game because he had won the first leg, but he didn't create anything. So I'm like, I'm just gonna stick with this. And I dominated everything until the end. And I kept that for the live event where I also played really well. And so against X, I played that because you would think, and I'm annoyed they kind of patched it because you would think 4-4-2 comeback on strikers is a park the bus tactic, whereas actually it's the best manual pressing tactic there is because there's no gap between your center mids and your strikers, and you can actually press really well every position on the pitch with every one of your players, and you can do that manually. So I used to love that tactic exactly for that reason. You're compact, but at the same time you can press. You can press manually. Um, and knowing I have that tactic, which other players don't, gives me the confidence and gives me the mental advantage for myself. Again, the mental part of FIFA. And by having that tactic is what I use against Sex, which eventually he used against me at playoffs and beat me with it. And then Moaba won the World Cup with that tactic, with like the comeback on strikers. Like I'm not saying I came up with it; it wasn't me or that I made it popular, but it just became a meta towards the end of the year, and I was one of the first ones to ride that meta at a tournament where no one else would.
yeah.
So that was kind of the advantage I was that was one of the times where I did not need a lot of game plans because I knew that game plan really worked for me.
I remember that I used that once in FIFA. This was FIFA 20, and I had never played 4-4-2. I just turn on 4-4-2. Someone's like, do 4-4-2, come back on defense on the strikers.
Before the
And
patch.
in FIFA 20, I played the first qualifier and I played out of my mind. Like I gave me a defensive confidence that I
Yeah.
hadn't felt in like 2 or 3 years. And
Exactly.
I was pressing. I had 3 lines of defense, but my first line of defense started in his third, so I wasn't in my half. So
Yeah.
at that point, I was always pressing. So it felt good. It felt good, and you kind of need that feeling in the games like 19, 20, 21, where you get past. You know, it really just takes one pass to get through you. So
Yeah.
when you had that confidence, you were like, "Oh my god," you know,
You just-
this feels
something,
great.
not necessarily in defense, but something that you know the other players don't have to give you that confidence.
Yeah,
And that's why I hate like the social media aspect of esport where like it's just competitive players being stupid. Like if you find something out, competitive advantage. I mean, keep it to yourself. Like it does you no good as a professional to share those things with others. Is it worth the few Twitter likes you're gonna get to ruin something that can give you a competitive advantage in a qualifier that can literally change your whole season slash life? It's not worth it, but people do it. I understand if you're a content creator, and even then, like, but okay, that I understand. But if you're a pro player and like you discover, like for example, Nicholas discovered the well, he didn't discover it, but like he was one of the first to use and master the super cancel, where the defenders auto lunge, and like his team posted that on Twitter on the following day. Like, why would you do that? Your player has one of the biggest competitive advantages in FIFA 21 at the start, and you post that online for people to see. Why would you do that? It's like I have throughout the years I've had so many I wouldn't call it secrets, but like things that are not popular that are really effective. And I could have made some extra cash from YouTube or some extra likes on Twitter, but is it worth it? No, because like I want to compete. I don't want to do content. And even if I want to do content, I can do other content. It's like, why do you want to ruin something competitively? Because you're a competitor. You're not a content creator. You're not a man of the people or whatever you want to call yourself. Your job as a pro FIFA player is to win. And I don't know. It's yeah, as FW says, maybe if you shared with a couple, like Lyric shares this with me and I shared it with him. We were not teammates back then, but we were close friends and we share stuff. Maybe there's a couple of people you share it with, but it has to be obviously under the assumption that you don't share it with other people unless it
yeah,
or else it grows. I just obviously FIFA is not a football simulator, right? I mean, it is in its core, but competitively, it's a video game. It's not a football game. So if you're competing on a video game, you need to know what works and what doesn't. And if you have something that's realistic, unrealistic, broken, or whatever that works, you keep it to yourself. For me, that's logical, right? For me, that's logical. And people who post these things online and just make them more and more popular when they're still viable, right? Because now that the super cancel defender is allegedly patched, then okay, talk about it all you want. Like it's done and dusted. I don't know. That's how I feel as a competitor. If you're casual, you obviously want to know about those things, and you're thinking, oh, pros want to keep the broken stuff for themselves. That's our job. Like you play the game for fun. You don't need to have the defenders lunge in front of your super cancels.
yeah.
We kind of do, because if I don't do it, my opponent will do it. So it's a
I,
it's a weird topic, but that's something I've always hated about social media, and like how that's one of the reasons I've also not streamed in the past couple of years, because I have a lot of broken shit that I just don't want people to see.
yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
the
it's
thing, though. It's like it depends on the broken thing, right? Because I'm not talking about the ethical standpoint or what you should or shouldn't do. I'm strictly talking about like something like come back on defense on 4-4-2. I think you can stream and hide that. And people were like,
Yeah,
what's he doing?
exactly.
But something like overload ball side,
Exactly.
super cancel, you can't hide that. Like you're either never streaming, but you play one pro and he's like, what are you doing? You know, I
And
think
I can
certain
give you an
things are
example.
too obvious.
I can give you an example. There was on FIFA 19. There was this uh, glitch ish where you can kick the ball with your keeper in your opponent's third and be thrown on net. Do you remember that? So you would bring your defense short from a goal kick, like bring your whole team closer on the pitch, and then you would just boot it up the field.
Yeah.
So that was a thing for like a month. I I did it once. I think someone either did it against me or I saw it or I did it by accident. One of the three. Either way, I spent the next 2 hours on squad battles or like against the AI with no, it was with two controllers, yeah, so kind of against the AI. Getting myself goal kicks and trying different keepers out with different camp styles that impact their kicking. And I tried to see uh, what the limit is of a keeper's kicking stats for you to be able to do that goal kick. And I remember it worked with Courtois with some camp styles. It always worked with Neuer, always worked with Ter Stegen. So, and the thing was, you call your defense like short from a goal kick, and you LB full power cross it up the pitch, and the defender doesn't lock onto the ball. So naturally, you're always running forward because you think you've locked onto the ball and you want to like push the attacker. So players would always run forward. They will run their defender out of position, and you will just run forwards yourself, and you would be in on goal. And I wanted to keep that for the first event, but I made the mistake of doing that against someone on stream once, but it wasn't even like they didn't make much of it. And I made the mistake of mentioning in a Discord call that I did something broken in one of the games I've played today. And some freak, I think it was one of the hashtag boys. I don't know who it was though. Maybe Dreamar, I think, possibly. I don't remember. It was one of the hashtag boys. And they went back through the games I've played that were on streams, and they saw that, and they saw it. They discovered how to do it. I think they mentioned it to hashtag Harry, and hashtag Harry did it in one game against Rocky in the qualifier, not the live event, because I was keeping it for the live event. He did it against Rocky in the qualifier, like late in the second leg, and he beat him with it. And what does Rocky do? He posted on Twitter.
Yeah.
And the FIFA community discovers that, and with me actually discovering that, I end up playing the first event against Jambo, and he tries that against me. Do you know how disrespected I felt?
I mean, yeah, you created that goal basically. It was a chain of events that led to that, which is why it's so difficult. This year, there's that thing where you scoop the ball up and chip, right? You can't be doing that if you make any content and expect no one to be like, that looks broken. Like that's so obvious. So I feel like that's why I barely make tactics videos, because if I do find a tactic that's insane, and I have an instruction that's insane, I'm not posting it. You know what I mean? I'm not telling you my 4-2-3-1 meta tactic. I'll tell you my 4-3-3 tactic. And if I tell you my tactic, it's like it's fine, but it's not special. That's the difference.
Exactly. It's like this year as well, I have a couple of tactics that I feel are effective and really good if you know how to play them, or like some in-game stuff that if my main thing was content, I would maybe show it to the people because like that would be your main thing. But if you're a pro player, why in your right mind would you want to share it? Even if you're doing both, why kill off one with the other when you can do both simultaneously?
Fear of missing out, right? That's why I would pick my poison, because like
Yeah.
an instruction I wouldn't, because I'm like, no chance someone figures this out. But overload ball side, I would, because it's so obvious. Like you can't
Yeah,
hide that.
that's why I was sending lyrics at the start of like last year, because the first event he was the one who discovered overload the ball side. He discovered it by accident previously, so he used overload the ball side, and he got to the FUT Champions Cup final kind of by using it. So fair play to him. He discovered something and he used it, right? And after the event, he was like, I want to do a recap video of my tournament and title it "The Secret Tactic That Got Me to a Champions Cup final." And like, are you crazy? Like,
Ask him
why would you
today
want to share
if it was worth it.
exactly? Like, why would you want to share that? That literally got you to a final. So I think he ended up doing it. People would have also discovered it eventually because you stream your games, you turn it on and off occasionally. So people would have discovered it, but like, why make their job easy? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess everyone's got their own like sort of. Some people might be just completely unaware. For me, something like that, I would always share it in hopes of EA like patching that quickly. But obviously,
That's not
um,
real nice work. Yeah.
I would literally like. So I think there was the FIFA analyst recently showed the TikTok with shot cancels, right? I was like in panic at first, and I was like, and then after 5 minutes, I was like, "Ah, okay, this is good. This is good because if they don't
But
patch it now, they never will." You
but
know?
that's the thing, like patches don't work that way. If you show EA something broken, like the way patches work, it takes 2 months. Like it takes them to figure it out, to patch it, to implement it in the game, to send the patch out, for the patch to be approved, to be rolled out on PC, then on console. It takes 2 months. So showing this publicly doesn't result in anything. Like the first qualifier I played, which was the last day of November, I lost in the loser bracket against someone who he scored his first goal with a super cancel when my defender lunged, and I'm like, at that point, I'm like, oh, you've won. Like you have won because I know that exists. I haven't mastered it. You've won, and he did win. And right after the game, like literally right after the game, I DM'd a game dev, and I'm like, I actually posted on Twitter yesterday. I'm like, super cancels are broken. They are literally broken, and they need a patch. And because of how patches work, it takes until the end of January from the start of December for that to be implemented in the game. So it's like you like make something public when it's in the pitch notes. I don't know because I could have made it public back then. Be like, oh, on Twitter, look at how I lost against super cancels. Do I want to
Yeah.
do that? No. Somebody destroyed me with it, so I'm just gonna abuse it myself.
Yeah, I think we all kind of there's a select people who knew it basically for a while now about the super cancel. It's just
Of course.
we were
But
like,
people
okay,
didn't
let's
know
just keep
how
it.
broken it is.
Yeah, for sure. Now I got some quick fire sort of questions that I want to ask
Okay.
you, and the way you can answer this, and I feel like this would be a good way to top it off. I want you to answer. So, for example, I could ask you, who is the best defender you've played? You can tell me Tex FIFA 17, Rocky FIFA 16, Gorilla, like, okay, so it doesn't have to be, if you really think that like Gorilla FIFA 17 was a better defender than Anders FIFA 21, for example.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
get it.
so that's like whatever you want in your experience, tell me that. So in your professional career, who is the best defender you faced? Or who is the best defender?
I can't say specifically defender because I pride myself being good in attack, but I would say Maestro because of the way he presses. Maestro
Mhm.
has an insane manual press that makes it so difficult to attack. And for me, the way I played, for me, that's the best defender. Him pressing me manually all over the place makes it hell for me.
Best attacker?
Uh, that I've played because I haven't played in like it
Actually,
seems.
I'll say anyone, even that you've seen. You might, if you
Yeah.
think that you've seen someone you haven't played,
And the
who's the
best
best?
defender, then it's Nicholas for me. Like there's no doubt.
Nicholas.
I've never played Nicholas.
All right,
Yeah,
say
for me.
okay. Let's say tell me both who you've played, and if
Okay.
there's someone that you've
Yeah,
seen that you think is better, tell me that
best
too.
defender I've seen, I think it has to be Nicholas.
Okay.
The best attacker that I've seen at this point with the meta and stuff, it has to be Anders this year. I think there's no doubt about it. The best one I've played, Ustun, 100%. I just realized Ustun. My first competitive game at an event, 12-2 on PlayStation.
Wow.
I
Okay.
started time racing at 8-2 down. He scored 4.
Crazy. Your favorite to watch?
My favorite to watch, probably Kurt.
Kurt? From any
Yeah,
FIFA, just any Kurt?
probably Kurt. Yeah, favorite to watch in terms of gameplay, the way he plays, and also like watching Nicholas. But that's because of the beauty of like he plays possession and he plays slow, but it's just beautiful.
It's
Um,
efficient.
but favorite to watch in terms of like, it's probably Ustun and Kurt,
Most clutch.
Nicholas, and Tex. But Nicholas with that World Cup PlayStation final header, Nicholas. Like you cannot score an equalizer. You can't score 3 goals in 10 minutes in a console final at the World Cup, green a header from a corner, and then deep in the 93rd minute after you've choked the 1v1, and not flinch. That is clutch.
Most consistent.
Two names come to mind: Razik and Tex.
Mm-hmm. Who would you give the title of pioneer / revolutionary? Someone who changed the game completely.
Probably, I mean, it was when I got into FIFA, but probably Gorilla because of the attacking football.
Tactician?
Tactician. As a coach, I would say Enzo because he's one of the few tactical coaches I know, and like I know he knows a lot about the game. I know myself a lot in terms of tactician, but in terms of someone who is high end competitively, I would say Dossary. I think people don't realize because of how good Dossary is actually in game. People don't realize he's also a very good tactician. So Dossary.
I like that because I remember in FIFA 18 he would switch between Diamond 4-1-2, Diamond 4-3-3 second variation, and 4-4-2 constantly. And at the time he didn't have game plan, so you have to press pause. I found that interesting. Who do you think serves as the best inspiration for the pro scene?
Inspiration. For consistency, work ethic, Razik. For what you can become in terms of, wow, this is the dream, Tex. For like role model, quote unquote, I would say Nicholas because of how humble he is and how good he is. And similarly, Dossary as well because of how good and humble he is.
The most memorable performance in a FIFA esports. So, for example, in football, you could say the most memorable game of football was the Istanbul final. What was the most memorable performance in FIFA esports, in your opinion?
Memorable, like the one I've played is obviously the one against Sex, but as a viewer, the most memorable game I think I've watched is Nicholas against Moaba. Nicholas against Moaba is especially I watched it live. Like I was in the venue. It was insane. Like that comeback was insane, and that was for Moaba because I don't know. It was I mean, I'm playing for the same agency as Moaba, but at the same time, I love Nicholas. So, either way, it was a really good match to watch.
Fair. The biggest the biggest or the most shocking result, the most unexpected result of any game you think you can remember?
I mean, the one I've played again, Tex against myself.
Tex with you.
Yeah, but otherwise the most unexpected, maybe Moaba against Dossary because of the Xbox domination, Dossary domination. So Xbox against PlayStation World Cup final, Dossary against Moaba winning. I would say that's pretty much an upset.
True. You know, I would have when I wrote that down, my thought was in hindsight, like it wasn't a shock, but in the moment, because we didn't know who he was and it was the start of a new game, Tex v Rocky, and when he destroyed him
I don't even remember destroying Rocky. Maybe it was because like a couple games ago he destroyed me 10-1. But yeah, in terms of upset, yeah, Tex winning Barcelona, definitely. Like just because we're used to Tex now, back then it was a real big upset. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember in the Swiss, he was facing Rocky. We were just off 17. No one knew who Tex was. They were kind of, and then when he beat that guy, that's when like the snowball started. Like this kid qualified with this team. He's beating these guys, and then I was like, everyone's like, what is happening? And then the last one, if possible, who do you think is the FIFA GOAT?
For me, it has to be DOS. For me, it has to be Dossary because as much as I know of the achievement Bruce Granick has, and like every Frenchie will be on my back for that. I don't think the competitive scene back then was what it is now. The way we have stuff to abuse now, they also had back then with like crosses, which is I would say borderline even more random than what we have now. But I would say DOS because like very consistent. For me, the thing that Tex lacks is obviously a big run in the World Cup.
Yeah,
obviously,
the
19
World Cup.
this year, 18 he won a trophy, 20 also really good, but Dossary making back-to-back World Cup finals, winning one of them. For me, it has to be Dossary. Like for me, it's yeah, for me it has to be Dossery, and then Tex and Gorilla, they kind of like fight for second, but I think Tex eventually will will have a clear second place, at least over Gorilla.
Yeah, I mean, Gorilla has just got that World Cup over it, but in terms
Yeah,
of sheer
exactly.
amount of
So
volume, I feel like
exactly.
I feel like Tex is just missing the World Cup. But hey, it's
Yeah,
just
or a
at the end
World
of the
Cup
day.
performance, right? No, not necessarily winning it, but like winning the Xbox side, for example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That would be a lot to add.
Yeah. Well, dude, you've given me far too much of your time. It was a pleasure to hear about your story, picking your brains, your opinions on everything. I had a good time, chat. I hope you guys had a good time as well. This will probably end up on the PLB YouTube channel in some format, like 20-minute clips or whatever. If not, we'll see. The VOD is still there. Thanks so much for coming, dude. Where can people find you if they want to search for you?
Thanks for having me. I mean, on Twitter, the Dr. Nightwatch. I would say YouTube, but I don't really upload. So Twitter, Instagram is the same, and like Twitch for streams, footwiz underscore DRNW.
True, where they can find. You won't tell them the tricks, but maybe they can find it if they look hard enough.
They can definitely see them. They can definitely.
All right. Appreciate it, man. We're going to stop the stream here, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out.